Have you ever stopped to think about what the world would be like without machines, modern transportation, or the sprawling cities we know today? Well, all of this began to take shape during the Industrial Revolution. It was in this moment of history that humanity took a giant leap towards the modern age, radically transforming the way we live, work, and connect. But was all this progress purely positive? Or did it also leave deep marks that aren't always so advantageous? In this video, we'll explore a fascinating scenario. What could have happened if the Industrial Revolution had never existed? Get ready to dive into a universe of possibilities and surprises that will surely spark your imagination. Slowed technological development. Imagine a world where technological advancement crawled at a snail's pace. Without steam engines, which kick-started industrialization, we might still be relying on candles to light our nights and horses to travel long distances. The technology we use today to connect with the world, like smartphones and computers, might not even exist. This delay wouldn't just affect our daily comforts. Think about how the world would lag in medical progress. Without industrial equipment, life-saving medicines and vaccines might never have been mass-produced. Something as simple as an antibiotic could be inaccessible, and diseases that are now under control might still pose fatal threats. On the other hand, it's interesting to imagine how society would compensate for this lack of technology. Would we rely more on manual creativity? What if we still lived in small communities focused on bartering goods and services directly, without the globalization that machines have brought us? However, living without technological advancements could also mean fewer digital distractions and a deeper connection to our surroundings. It's curious to think, would we be happier or simply more resigned to our circumstances? Agriculture-based economy. Now imagine a society where almost everyone still lives in the countryside, depending on the land to survive. Without the Industrial Revolution, we wouldn't have factories for mass production or a highly developed global trade network. The economy would be essentially agricultural, with people growing only what they needed to sustain their families or small communities. This would also mean that urbanization would be almost non-existent. Large cities like São Paulo, New York, or London wouldn't be anything like we know them today. Perhaps they wouldn't exist at all. The focus would be on villages and towns, where life would be simpler, but also more limited. And what about trade? Without industries to create goods on a large scale, markets would consist only of local products like grains, fruits, and handmade items. Imported goods like coffee or spices would be rare luxuries, accessible only to a small elite. On the other hand, an agricultural economy might mean a society more connected to nature, with less pollution and greater respect for the environment. But would we live better without modern conveniences like household appliances, industrialized clothing, or efficient transportation? This dependence on the land would profoundly impact our way of life. We'd likely be less consumerist, but perhaps we'd also have less time for innovation or leisure. A society with greater social equality. Without large factories and the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few industrialists, it's likely that society would have less pronounced class divisions. The absence of the Industrial Revolution could have resulted in a more balanced economy, where the focus would be on self-sustaining communities rather than relentless profit. Imagine a society where no one has to work 12-hour shifts in unsanitary conditions, as many laborers did during the Industrial Revolution. The rampant exploitation of labor simply wouldn't occur. However, this social equality might come at another price: less innovation and limited access to consumer goods that make our lives easier today. On the other hand, the lifestyle might be more cooperative. Everyone would contribute more directly to the survival of the community, and the concept of individualism likely wouldn't hold the same weight as it does today. Yet, without the push of industrial competition, would humanity have been motivated to create new technologies or explore the world? The absence of extreme inequality may sound like a dream, but it's important to remember that without an industrial system, global economic growth would be much slower, and living conditions might be less comfortable for everyone, regardless of social class. Environmental impact changes. Without the Industrial Revolution, the planet would have a completely different environmental history. Without factories releasing tons of pollutants into the air and water, the environment would undoubtedly be in better condition. Forests would remain intact, rivers cleaner, and the atmosphere likely free from the alarming levels of greenhouse gases we see today. Now, imagine life in a world where the relationship with nature was more respectful. Without the rampant coal mining and massive exploitation of natural resources, ecosystems would have more time to regenerate. Who knows? Species driven to extinction by human activity might still be alive, and oceans could be teeming with marine life. On the other hand, the absence of industrialization would also mean that advancements in infrastructure, such as basic sanitation and electricity, could be delayed by decades or even centuries. While the air would be purer, many people might face basic hardships, such as a lack of potable water or heating in winter. The balance between progress and environmental preservation is a challenge that arose directly from the Industrial Revolution. Without it, we'd be living in a greener world, but with less comfort and convenience. The big question is, would we have found a way to balance human development with caring for the planet? Limited education system. Without the Industrial Revolution, access to education would be completely different. Industrialization brought with it the need for a more qualified workforce, which spurred the creation of public and mandatory educational systems. Without this demand, education would likely remain limited to elites or religious groups. Imagine a world where only a small portion of the population knows how to read or write. Without public schools spread across cities, learning would be restricted to basic teachings passed down within families, often focused on agricultural or artisanal tasks. Specialized professions such as doctors, engineers, or scientists would be rare, and the progress of human knowledge would be significantly delayed. On the other hand, the absence of a formal educational system doesn't mean people wouldn't develop practical and creative skills. Communities might find ways to pass on specific knowledge, but this would create enormous barriers to technological or scientific innovation. Furthermore, education as a means of social mobility would be almost non-existent. Without accessible schools and universities, social mobility would be nearly impossible, and divisions among different societal groups might become even more rigid. What would it be like to live in a world where learning was restricted to a few? Would knowledge become more valued or simply irrelevant in such a simple society? Decreased transportation innovations. Without the Industrial Revolution, modern transportation would be completely different, or rather, almost non-existent. Without railways and combustion engines that emerged from this period, we'd still rely on horses, carts, or even long walks to get around. International travel. It would likely only be possible by sailing ships, taking weeks or months to cross oceans. Imagine how this would impact daily life. Without cars, buses, or airplanes, mobility would be extremely limited. Visiting a distant city would be a true expedition, and globalization, as we know it, would never have occurred. Products from other parts of the world would be inaccessible to most people, and trade would be confined to what could be produced locally. On the other hand, the absence of motorized transport would also mean less pollution and no traffic congestion. Cities might be designed in a much more compact way, with everything within walking or biking distance. The concept of distance would be entirely different from what we know today. However, it's hard to imagine how human progress would be constrained without these innovations. Major historical events such as wars or territorial expansions would have happened at a different pace, and more importantly, how would people maintain ties between such isolated communities? Fewer specialized jobs. Without the Industrial Revolution, the concept of work would be entirely different. Most people would be involved in basic activities like farming, fishing, or crafting. Specialized professions, such as engineers, scientists, or technicians, would be extremely rare, as there wouldn't be the industrial demand for such expertise. Now think about how this would shape society. Without machines to handle repetitive tasks, everything would depend on manual skills. From making clothes to building houses, every item would be individually crafted with an artisanal care that we now view as exclusive. But at the same time, This would mean such products would be expensive and inaccessible to most people. On the other hand, the lack of industrial jobs might result in a slower-paced life, free from the pressure of exhausting workdays. People might spend more time on community activities or focusing on daily survival. However, without a variety of professions, human creativity and innovation would be limited, restricting progress in areas like science, technology, and art. How would it feel to live in a world where every profession is directly tied to immediate survival? Would this create a simpler and more content society or merely a less ambitious one? Smaller global population. Without the Industrial Revolution, the world population would be significantly smaller. This is primarily due to the absence of medical and technological advancements brought about by industrialization. Vaccines, basic sanitation, and mass food production were crucial in increasing life expectancy and supporting population growth. Imagine a world where diseases like smallpox, cholera, or tuberculosis continued to claim the lives of large portions of the population. Without modern hospitals and accessible treatments, many lives would be lost prematurely. Additionally, agriculture would be limited to traditional techniques, making it difficult to feed large groups of people, especially during droughts or poor harvests. On the other hand, a smaller population might mean less pressure on natural resources. The planet would have more room to regenerate and environmental impacts might be less severe. However, a slower pace of population growth would also mean fewer creative minds to drive human progress. This scenario raises a major question. Would we live in harmony with the environment, or merely struggle to survive in a world without the advancements we now consider essential? And so, we've explored an alternative world where the Industrial Revolution never happened. From its impact on technological development to changes in the environment and society, it's fascinating to imagine how humanity's history could have taken a completely different path. Industrialization brought innovations and challenges, but also shaped the world we know today. Now it's your turn to participate. Do you agree with the conclusions we've presented? Is there an aspect you think we missed but should have included? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. Oh, and don't forget, if you enjoyed the content, subscribe to the channel to join us for more reflections and time-traveling journeys. And don't miss the next video, popping up on your screen right now. See you there.